This week on New Arrivals, it's Neo Vintage Heaven. That sweet spot in the market between old and new where some of the world's most desirable watches sit. We have some really special pieces from that era on the table, plus I want to chat about one of the biggest stories on the site right now, our Daytona lineup. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the Royal Oaks on the table. First up is the reference 25654BA in yellow gold with a white dial. Perpetual calendars started appearing in the Royal Oak during the mid-80s. It was around a decade after the model line launched. This is the second generation of the Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar. And what I find so intriguing about these is how dramatically they depart from what this angular sports watch represented when it first arrived. We've gone from stainless steel with a simple time and date display to solid gold with a perpetual calendar. And I absolutely love it. I do feel slightly conflicted because the tapisserie dial has gone. And also, I'm generally more of a white metal guy, but this piece is incredibly special. The white dial is among the rarest configurations of the reference. It gives the watch a more traditional feel and makes this version feel noticeably dressier. When you look at the way the perpetual calendar is displayed and the sub-registers, they have that kind of dress watch appeal to them. Overall, it's a rare and compelling version of the Royal Oak, and it also houses the legendary caliber 2120-2800, which at the time was the world's thinnest automatic perpetual calendar movement. Okay, so that's a super technical, full precious metal reference, the kind of top dog of the Royal Oak range. What about if you just love the Royal Oak shape and you really want to get into that world? Here's my advice. Don't write off the 33mm Quartz Royal Oaks. And we have an example here to prove my point. This is a two-tone example from the 1990s. Let's tackle the size thing first by getting this on, so I can demonstrate just how good it looks. It's easy to look at the 33mm sports watch on paper and assume it's too small. When you think about the Explorer at 36, the Sub at 40, it sounds small. But with an integrated bracelet and this lug structure, the watch wears bigger than its dimensions suggest. You can see here on the wrist, it has plenty of presence. I also love how thin this watch is. And combined with this smaller case, it's incredibly comfortable to wear. Part of the reason for the slimness is because of the quartz movement, which is the other sticking point. I guess if you're a die-hard mechanical watch enthusiast, then there's going to be an issue. But when you consider that it gives you access to the Royal Oak at a substantially lower price point, to me, it starts to make a lot of sense. And ultimately, if you're looking for the most approachable way into the Royal Oak market, this definitely deserves your attention, especially if you appreciate the two-tone finish, which really reminds me of the 1980s and 1990s aesthetic. Speaking of two-tone, here's a sub with plenty of personality. This is a reference 16613, and what drew me immediately to this watch was the dial. These sunburst blue dials tend to fade over time, and they take on a really characterful purple hue that adds so much character to these watches. And we'll get in nice and close so you can see the way that that plays with the light. There's something incredibly appealing about dials that evolve over time, developing colors that modern watches just can't replicate. And there's just no way a new watch dial can take on that same level of character that vintage examples have. I also think that two-tone has a lot of charm. While modern gold sports watches can sometimes feel a little flashy, a little bold, there's something about the softer tone of older gold that I find really appealing. Rolex has absolutely mastered the art of making utilitarian watches luxurious without losing any of the practicality. And a two-tone sub is the epitome of that. Okay, this is the one. This is my favorite version of my favorite Rolex model. It's the Explorer II, reference 16550. This guy's a short-lived reference, produced for only a couple of years, but it's full of history. It brought the Explorer II into a new era with an updated movement, and for the first time, the option of a white dial, something that now defines the Explorer II range. But what is so appealing about this and why collectors love them is because they were made with a paint defect that caused the white dial to turn into a creamy ivory color. And they've become so collectible as a result. But despite that, I still think they're a little bit undervalued, especially when you compare them to some of the other sought-after vintage Rolex references. This example is in fantastic condition, and the transitioning color on both the dial and the tritium markers is spot on. Okay, so it's hard to imagine now, but there was a time when the Aquanaut was considered a controversial watch. Today, it's one of Patek Philippe's most sought after models, but when it launched in the late 90s, it represented a massive departure from the brand and what they were known for. So it was inspired by the rounded octagonal case of the Nautilus, and it took on that familiar design language and gave it, I would say, like a far younger, more casual personality. And a huge part of that is this tropical rubber strap. Today, luxury sports watches on rubber straps are everywhere. Back then, this was a genuinely bold move for Patek Philippe. It completely changed perceptions of what a Patek sports watch could be. What makes this one so special? It's the very first Aquanaut, where it all began back in '97. And the thing that always strikes me when I put this on is the size. Modern Aquanauts have gradually grown over the years, but for me, this is still the sweet spot. The proportions are just right. It sits perfectly on the wrist and it has all the presence you'd expect from a Patek sports watch without feeling oversized. To me, it's just ideal. Then there's little details that remind you that this is an early example. And you have to mention the tritium hour markers. Like the other watches we've mentioned today that have that same lume, it develops an amazing patina over time, adding a kind of warmth and character to the dial that you just don't get from modern superluminova. For me, this is the ultimate version of this model line, the very first one. And nearly 30 years later, it's still one of the most influential luxury sports watches ever made. Now we've covered all the watches on the table, I want to finish with something that's really caught my eye this week. The number of Daytonas we've got on the site right now. Whether you're into vintage references or the very latest releases, there is genuinely something for everyone. For collectors into the manual wind era, we have a fantastic range spanning some of the model's most important references. From the original 6239 all the way through to the final chapter of the manual wind era, the 6263 and 6265. Examples that chart the evolution of Rolex's most celebrated chronograph. And if your tastes lean a little bit more contemporary, we also have an unworn 2026 Platinum Daytona with factory Piguet diamond hour markers. Of course, if you'd like to place a bid, registering takes just a couple of minutes. And if you have any questions along the way, you'll always be able to speak to a real member of the team. And if you're thinking about selling, don't forget, we offer 0% seller fees across every auction. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.